I'm doing all right. I learned something new. If you right-click on a contact, you can choose FaceTime, FaceTime audio, call using iPhone, block this caller, remove from recents, show contact card. So just right-click and FaceTime audio. But why the hell it's got my camera on, I do not know.
So the interesting thing is, for once, it did not pop up the camera and all on my side for a change.
Did you update to 0.4?
I did.
I have not done that on the computer I'm recording from.
I didn't plan to. I actually accidentally updated.
How did you accidentally update?
Because I didn't pay attention to what I was accepting.
Oh.
I have it set to do just security updates, and so I was thinking I was just hitting update on the security update, and yeah.
Well, technically, you might have been doing well, you said just a security update, so that never mind. You qualified yourself out of what I was going to say.
Not a big deal. I mean, everything seems to be working okay, so.
I was going to wait until next week because I wasn't sure that it was going to drop. I knew it was coming. Like I knew that they had an RC and release candidate. So that was for listener, not you. And something I don't know. I did use it to. Goodness, I need to. I don't. Unsituated. I should be situated, but I don't feel. Anyway. All right. I used it on my Mac Mini that I did not get to try out for sluggishness, but I did, well, messing around with SSH keys and, I was going to say, so I renamed my SSH keys because I came up with a new naming convention and I was sorting all that out and I pushed the update, and I was able to log in without having to use a keyboard and a mouse and a screen.
What are you using to push out your keys? Let me, rephrase my question. Are you doing anything management-wise, or are you just manually?
I made a key, and so now like each Mac has a key, and I've been looking to see what best practices are, and I haven't been following what is considered best practices. So I have two Mac Minis, and goodness me, hold on. All right, at 4 minutes, please edit that out.
And it's also, I mean, pollen has started picking up as well. It's that time of year. Like, there's no telling what combination of things are contributing.
True story. And I have not historically been, subjected to, I have not had allergies, but I think as I'm getting, I think I get affected by allergies every, so often as I'm getting older. Like I remember as a little kid, no allergies for anything. Like I even, I have no way of actually knowing, but when I was a little kid, I thought I was not allergic to poison ivy. I'm fairly confident I just never came into contact with poison ivy. Anyway, it wasn't until I was a teenager I started having some issues with pollen, and that was just only mowing the yard. And I think I really like, now this time of year, if based on the color of my car, it doesn't look like the pollen is too bad, but based on one of my children, the pollen seems not great. But there's probably some amount of just a little bit of allergy response to the pollen because I think I'm getting more sensitive to it as I get older. It's kind of like how I now have I was looking at myself in a security camera. Like went to get my oil changed, and there was like a food place, and there's a security camera, and you can walk up to it, and you can see the back of your rear top view of yourself. And I was like, wow, there's a noticeable bald spot on the back of my head. So I think as my hair is thinning, I think that my resistance to pollen is increasing or decreasing.
I was trying to think of a snarky one-liner, and I was just drawing a blank. Because the only thing that kept going through my head was, I dealt with a bald spot since middle school, and it was what eventually led me to just going ahead and shaving the head anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything snarky I have to say would backfire on me immediately.
Um, so okay, so what I did, I guess I'll just because what I did was on the I didn't know anything for anything, and so I've learned that it really doesn't matter where you make your keys. You can make your keys anywhere. It as long as you have the private key on the device that you're working from, and the public key is on the computer that you want to SSH into. I think that if I took a quiz and was asked that question, I think I would have gotten that correct. Like even, 10 years ago or almost 10 years ago when I started using SSH, I think I would have gotten that correct based on just setting up my first work computer a long time ago. And, and I had this moment, I was like, can I change the name of my key? I was like, I'm fairly confident I can, because it's the contents that matters and the name of the key doesn't really matter. Again, as long as I have my private key on the computer that I'm using and my public key is out where it should be. Because it occurred to me that when I gave my public key to the folks that I had to give it to be able to access all of our servers, they probably renamed it so that they would know this is John's key. They probably, put my name on it, my core ID, something, whatever. So that way they can. I would have done it with the core ID since they're all the same length and easy to manage. Anyway, I just messed about, renamed my keys. So I have I guess the best practice I am not doing, what I'm not doing is I don't have a key for each computer. Like I should have a private and public key for each computer. Like, so I have, if I have two MacBook Pros that I want to use to access my Mac Minis, each one of those should have an independent private and public key, and I didn't do that. I just said, "Hey, we're gonna share keys," because I control those computers. They're in my hands, and if there was a computer that I didn't control, like I was like, "Hey, here's SSH access to this device. You control it." I would be like, "Give me your. I need you to create keys, and you give me your public key." But that's not what I'm doing. So, for all intents and purposes, I have a private and a public key per user, not per device.
Fair enough.
So, I still have not upgraded my older Mac Mini to Debian. I was going to do the same as you. That seemed like a good idea. I'm still going to do it. I just haven't done it yet. What am I waiting on? Oh, because I think the thing that's just my mental blocker has been the HomeKit's going to go down for a bit or Homebridge, which taps into HomeKit, it's going to go down for a bit, and so I just have not moved forward because I don't want to deal with that at the moment. So that's really that and Plex. My Plex is going to go down, so I want to keep using that same device for Plex, but I have to make sure I'm prepared to transfer things over from. It's the same Mac Mini. It's just a different drive in the Mac Mini. So anyway, what I did was I have my public keys on the other Mac Mini, the one that has it's an M1 Mac Mini, and it's running Tahoe. So I did 3 tests. I just did a simple restart, and when you do when it powers off and it powers back on, all you have to do is SSH to it. And I should have saved the output, because it tells you, hey, you may now SSH into this device like normal. And what it does is when you SSH into it, it asks you for the computer's password, and then it boots. It unlocks the volume. And so I waited a few minutes, and then it was available in remote desktop. And then I tried that. I did a power off and power on, like full power off and on. Same thing. Type in your SSH to it, type in the password. No problems. And then the third thing I did was I did an update to 26.4 and let it reboot. Because, when it installs the update, you can remote desktop stays active. That was a feature that's long been around. So you can actually watch the update from remote desktop, and then when it reboots, a few seconds, and you can log in, because I think it stays up for a couple of minutes before it powers off. So it was it worked. The Mac Mini was sitting on my desk in front of me, connected to a keyboard and mouse, or I turned off the keyboard and mouse, and but I had the display on, and it worked without any problems. It was pretty easy.
I have not read the documentation yet. Does it rely on keys to be able to do that, or
yes?
Okay.
So I sent the link, and it's a lot of stuff in there, and in the list of bug fixes and other improvements, it says file, and I think I don't know if this is specific to 26. No, it's definitely not. It didn't come with 26.4 because I did this on the restart and the cold start I did from 26.3. But it says file vault can now be unlocked over SSH after a restart if remote login is enabled and a network connection is available. More information is available on the Apple SSH and File Vault manual page. So I did a Apple SSH and File Vault, and it really doesn't tell you much more than what that bullet point says in the documentation.
Unsurprising. But it is something I need to set up. It would make my life easier. It of course, does miff me a little bit that they wait until after I finally decide, screw it, I'm going to install a different operating system on the servers so I don't have to deal with this shit anymore. And
you needed to do that anyway.
I did, but it's just annoying that I could have avoided even that nuisance had that feature come about sooner. But since then, I now have Ubuntu running on my old MacBook Pro as a server as well.
What? Okay, I know you said you didn't care for Ubuntu. So what's why'd you choose Ubuntu?
Specifically for the T2 chip support. Limited T2 chip support. So I didn't want to deal with a lot of the headaches of getting the internal storage seen by the kernel after the fact, and that was one of the distributions that had limited support out of the gate, if you will, to install and could see the internal storage and use it. The built-in keyboard and trackpad are not usable, which actually serves my purpose well.
Well, I guess okay.
I mean, I could always install the drivers, but it's
right.
They're not. They don't function out of the box, and so to get the initial install done, I had it sitting beside me with the USB keyboard plugged in anyway. Went through everything, made sure I could SSH to it, and then just set it in the rack and have it powered like a desktop. So,
do you have it in clamshell mode?
Yes.
Is that supported? Okay. And is it just CLI?
Yes. And
interesting.
And it will be my new logging aggregation and search and everything else analysis type server. That way I don't have to put that on the Mac Pro and can let the Mac Pro do all of the other functions I want it to do instead. So eventually it will take over Homebridge and Plex. Right now I have Homebridge deployed on it and on my Mac Mini. Same thing with Plex, so that I could run both in tandem, make sure I get things set up working, and then basically erase the Mac Mini and figure out what I'm going to do with it.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think about this because I'm not going to wipe out. So I have in the Mac Mini that I'm going to install. Pretty sure I'll do Debian. It sounded like a good idea. I don't have a reason. I'm not committed to any particular distribution. And
that is not to necessarily interject, but that's the other reason I went ahead and chose Ubuntu is because it is built on Debian, so core infrastructure is still similar.
Yeah. I think Ubuntu is what I don't know if I used it more than OpenSUSE, but I wasn't doing any, I didn't know. I wasn't tinkering at all in OpenSUSE, and I did a little in Ubuntu. So I guess I could say that I'm a little more familiar with that on as far as like to start tinkering around. But let's see, where was I going with this?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut.
Oh, no.
But you were saying that you were thinking
Yeah,
you were gonna.
I can go ahead and do the installation because, my plan is to install Debian on the 128 gigabyte SSD, and then I have a so this Mac Mini was a late 2014, and it had a Fusion drive. So it had a 128 gigabyte SSD, and then it came with a 1 terabyte rotational hard drive. And I replaced that with a 2 terabyte SSD. It's probably SATA 3. And that has been running Mac OS. The 2 terabyte drive has been running Mac OS since I installed it. And I initially set up the 128 gigabyte drive for content caching, and I just don't have enough devices in the house for that to make sense. And people, I'm not sure, but I would expect, like, if I have an iPhone 15 Pro and and then Becca has an iPhone 17, I don't know, is it going to be different? Were they IPSWs, or is it the same one? I don't know. I think they're different. Like the installation to go to 26.4 would be a different file.
It has never been consistently one way or the other that I recall. And I quit paying attention to it for a while also, so I don't know for sure. Like, I don't have a good answer for you, but I do know at one point there were different ones for different models, and at one point they unified a lot of them for specific releases, but I think it was only the same generation release, like, and so different year releases would still be different files. Like, I don't remember all the different ways it was subdivided.
Well, I think that just goes to the point that I was going to make. It supports the point that I was going to make, is that I don't have enough devices in of all the devices, let alone devices that are the exact same model, that would justify using, or that would that would benefit from content caching. So, like I have already wiped that content cache drive, so I can actually. It just occurred to me, oh, why don't I just go ahead and start it? And if for some reason I don't get it working as quickly as I want to, I can go ahead and just switch back to Mac OS. I don't have to wipe that drive until I know that it's working on Debian. So. Thank you for that. So,
glad to be of assistance.
Yeah, but I also pulled up that man page for Apple SSH File Vault, and it just goes into detail about what File Vault is and what it's doing. It just provides context. It doesn't actually provide any other, just context about File Vault and why you need to SSH into it to unlock the data volume.
Yeah, one of the things I still need to do with my redesign of everything is to actually go back and implement keys, but I wanted to wait until I did it. I want to automate it for my purposes, just because I have more than one device that I'm going to be deploying a key to, so I want it all nice and simple from my perspective. And if I'm already automating the rest of everything else for whatever reason I choose to do so, which is just, it's easy enough to do, why not? But I have never actually tried to make it work to Mac OS. So I figure I need to work on getting that connectivity functional, because I'm sure it's capable. It's just I got to figure out what differences might need to be done. And then once I have that operational, then I can just generate a key and deploy it to everything with the few keystrokes. But I still need to
what are you going to use to automate?
I use Ansible for it. So I already...
I thought so.
Yeah, I already have everything set up for both the Mac Pro and the MacBook Pro, running the two Linux distributions for everything that I've done so far. So I've got one playbook that does everything and has some conditionals based on which operating system for which roles that it runs as well. just because it's the right way to do it. And so it wouldn't be difficult once I know that I can get connectivity working between, my MacBook Pro is the control node. So between my MacBook Pro and one of the Mac Minis, it would be simple enough to then drop both of them into shared, essentially inventory file, so that they're treated basically the same, and then deploy the keys. It's a part of that same overall single playbook that I can run to do everything.
Very cool. You did a lot of stuff with Playbook at the end of your tenure.
Yeah.
Not working for yourself, correct?
Correct. I actually did quite a bit that was a precursor to someone else's exploration of using Ansible, which then led to the widespread use of Ansible for other stuff. I don't know that
within all of Software Enterprise.
Within the stuff that we were doing, I don't know beyond ECH, but a lot of my exploration is what led someone, specifically one other person, to do some of the stuff they did with the updates and all in place and everything else. So it was nice to see that my playing around with it paid off. Because I was doing most of it as a proof of concept for other reasons, but it caught wind.
Yeah. I think I can guess who that is. I'll ask you later.
Yeah. I just don't want to name names that aren't,
Right. Keep the private.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I assumed as much. I was listening to that made me think. I was listening to the latest episode of last week I was listening to the latest episode of the Accidental Tech podcast, and I thought that you might be interested in a segment where I'm going to go ahead and give you the spoiler, but it's not much of a spoiler. But Marco talked about some work he was doing with building transcription into Overcast, and he started deploying Mac Minis to do the M4 Mac Minis to do the transcription, and he started out with I think started out with 3, and then it went to 5, and then through the course of conversation, he's ended up with 48 Mac Minis, and he has them in a data. I think he has them in a data center in Long Island. But it's a good listen. I thought you would really appreciate it because he delved into automating certain things like this. I don't know what he's using, and but it made me. I just remember thinking when he was talking about it, I was thinking about you working with Ansible to figure out some automation, working on playbooks and so forth. And so, I thought that would be. I thought you'd enjoy that.
Yeah, I'll take a look, because what I'm in the process of doing now is adding the roles to deploy the stack that I'm going to use for log aggregation and all onto that MacBook Pro. So right now, technically, I do have webmin installed on it also, even though I haven't used. I know I mentioned this some time ago. I went ahead and installed webmin on both, even though I don't use it, just because I figured why not. So I have a couple of things that are not just out of the box on that machine, but it's so minimal. I think the other thing that I installed was curl. But I figure there's no reason not to go ahead and automate the deployment from the get-go for the log aggregation stuff, because it's a complex enough deployment that I want to test it with the initial deployment, and if it works, great. If not, I can tweak it and troubleshoot it as I go and fix it so that in the rare, oddity that the machine dies and I need to replace it, I will have the playbook ready to be able to just hit a button and be good to go. Just because I don't want to go through the headache of deploying something like that again. And part of it is because I'm not using... Well, I guess I can call it out. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use OpenSearch and see how it works. It's an open source derivative or fork of what would have been Elasticsearch 7, I think, version-wise. And so because it's open source and not bundled installer and everything else, there's enough configuration going into it that I just don't want to do it a second time. So I'm trying to do it as a one-time write everything and then deploy and see what happens. Where I'm having to take some time is the security layer, going back to talking about like the SSH keys, because I'm trying to include in the playbook the generation and deployment of self-signed certs in a way that I don't have to have any kind of manual intervention. And if I want to ever actually deploy it in a normal way with non-self-signed certs, I'm trying to build it in a way where I can just drop that in place. Honestly, I have no reason why, because I'm never going to do it for me personally, and I'm never going to deploy this for anybody else. But at the same time, it just felt like why not do it as though I'm having to take it into a commercial production environment. And so creating a bit of a extra lift and headache for myself, but I think it will make it more robust long term. And then I think it will also feed into the fact that assuming I get that deployment working, it should be easy to turn around and deploy on any other machine ever with very minimal modification.
Okay.
Still seems kind of stupid that I'm giving myself extra homework to make it work that way, but it does and it doesn't. It can make the arguments both ways, and most of it is if I know that I'm never going to deploy it for a customer, why do it? But
because doing sysadmin stuff is fun.
Doing it right is it's the way to do it.
Yeah. No, well, there was a point in time where I would come across something and I'm like, oh, this is a mess. Do I need to fix it because for what I'm doing? No, but it is good to leave something better than you found it. And now I've gotten to a point where it's like, well, I don't need to fix it for, it's become more than just leaving it better, or more than it's more than just leaving it better than I found it. It is, you know what, this needs to be done right.
It's kind of an art in and of itself. I mean, and to an extent, whether you enjoy it or not, or whether it's fun or not, there's a recognition of a complex thing and being able to say, you know what, I can make that right. That is in and of itself a bit of an art form.
Yeah. So this is a thing that I get personal enjoyment from. And if there's a line of people that came before me that should have done this correctly, and they didn't. So I'm going to do it correctly. The justification that I give at this point in time, like the justification I give is like, I did not get the correct set of material, I didn't get this set up correctly for doing this project. So what I'm doing is, maybe you might consider it outside of the scope of the project, but it needs to be done so that I can do the project correctly. I have found, I can look and say, look, I have found all of these problems that if I tried to do it otherwise, I might have, maybe I could have struggled with it and done the bare minimum to get the project done, but I'm going to leave it better than I found it. 1, I get satisfaction out of doing that. 2, it bothers me when it's not done correctly. 3, if you're going to micromanage me with spreadsheets and call that, we want to make sure that we're getting correct utilization, well, I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to use that to my benefit. I was like, here's a thing that needs to get done. I like to do it. I'm going to get credit for it. So.
Makes sense.
Yep. So, yeah, it's like, you know what? I want to see these things in order. They've gotten out of order for there's a reasonable explanation into why these are no longer in order. I am going to put them in a place where when I need to look at them, I'm going to take the time and put them in order and not just guess, because it's easy in the long run. It's easier for me. And it's one of those slow is smooth is fast.
Which translates into so many different things that I could. Anyway.
What do you think? Like, what's the thing?
Oh,
You're thinking of?
everything. So I was
Yeah,
thinking about
okay.
like the network related stuff that I just redid.
Yes,
Taking my
yes.
time.
That's nice transition.
Yeah.
Nice segue.
Well, and I was also thinking about it with regard to martial arts earlier today. So it's fun that it's come up repeatedly. But yeah, with the network related stuff, I know we've texted some in between recording last time and this time.
Are you still saying things?
Yeah, did it?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It cut out for a second.
Sorry.
Well, I wanted to interject though. That last night I was watching an episode of Modern Family from the first season. An episode of Modern Family from the first season, and Phil, he says to his, he's getting his kids out there. They've set the alarm for the house. They're going on vacation, and he goes, "We got 15 seconds," and I hear him go, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast," to his kids as they're going out the door. And I was like, "Oh my God, I've said that to my kids." I was like, because I'm also like, at this point, if I was going to pick, he's one of the three fictional characters that I would identify with, or people have said, "Oh, you're like this person or what, this character or whatever," and I was like, shoot. And now, I think in the first season, I think his character is younger than I am now. I'm just like, whew, so much going on there.
That's funny. But yeah, what I was going into was just that I know we've texted some in between recording last week and this week about the woes that I was having that I
got the spoiler
alluded to. Yeah. And so two separate issues that I had mentioned on the show. Both of them were things that continued to be problematic as I was working through everything. One was related to the Firewall internet security appliance that I have that exists in between my Unify router and the primary distribution switch. So it acts as a transparent monitor across that uplink. And then the other was a specific port on my primary distribution switch that I was having trouble with. And so we'll take both of them separately. But the slow is smooth, smooth is fast comment really comes into play with the Firewall, because, as I was doing all of this work, I was doing it on the same day that we recorded, on a day that was me being solo parent because wife was out of town for work, and so I had a compressed time frame that I was working in, because I was trying to get all of this stuff redone, everything reconfigured and operational for both my son to get home and still be able to use internet access to do homework, and then for us to record later that evening. And I've said it a few thousand times over the course of my career that rushing is the bane of any administrator's existence. Whether it's network systems, doesn't matter. It's just things will happen that are problematic. And where this all comes into play is the next day I was going back and finally working on setting up the Firewall again with the VLANs that I had defined in my Ubiquity setup. And I took my time. That was the only thing I had to configure. It's not like I had to get things functional. Everything else was working. It just wasn't working in the way I wanted it to work long term. And so at that point, it was all just configuration. And so I took my time. I entered each VLAN independently. I didn't try to rush. I waited for it to see that it was configured and start seeing devices. Then I would configure the next one, kind of thing. Instead of configuring one and then after it saves, configuring the next and just going through them. I wouldn't say fast, but I didn't give the extra time the first time I configured it to make sure that devices would start being detected. I just configured the next one and then configured the next one until I was done. And taking it slower, I ran into no issues getting the device configured and properly matching my defined VLANs and properly detecting every device. Did not have the strange, it always wanted to change its physical connectivity. Like I have no answer for why it behaved differently other than the fact that I took my time with configuration. Now, I'm also a realist from the standpoint of I know what one tweak I changed in my configuration that should have had absolutely zero impact. But it was a change, and so I recognized that there's a possibility there was some strange thing going on related to it that I just couldn't see at the time. And that is, instead of statically assigning the IP on the firewall, I did an address reservation on the unified side so that it still always has the same IP. It just gets it via DHCP. Technically, should not have changed anything, but that's the only thing I configured differently. Everything else configured the exact same way. I was configuring it from the get-go, and it worked exactly the way it was supposed to. So yeah, no clue what actually was the problem the first time around. I expect that because I was not taking my time during configuration, I either misclicked or mistyped or did something that triggered the responses I was seeing and just didn't see it. But that would be the common or the most common answer for that type of scenario. If you're an administrator of any type, that's typically what the answer is. You think you've double, triple, quadruple checked something. You've mistyped something because you're trying to go faster.
Yep, I have been there before.
The other issue...
you skip a step. You mistype a thing.
Yeah, and I even engaged support for Firewalla and said, I need a sounding board. This does work the way I anticipate it working, correct? Like, I understand the configuration. Is there something strange that you guys know of with the device that I need to be on the lookout for that I'm just, oblivious to for whatever reason? And everything I got back from support was also the same. Nope, that you've got it right. You know exactly how to configure it. Okay, then let's see what I get.
Okay, did you use cocaine at all?
I did not.
Okay.
This was purely my knowledge and understanding and making sure that I was correct. The other issue was the port issue. And that one was not related to speed of configuration or anything else. It followed to the other port that I had mentioned I just moved where the cable was plugged into. It was strange, though, in that I can move it to the other port and it would be 7 to 8 hours before I would start seeing degradation. So everything seemed to be great, but without fail, at about the 7.5 to 8 hour mark, things would start to deteriorate.
It's odd.
Very odd. And so my first thought actually was it had to be, well, I had two thoughts. One is that maybe it was actually the switch port or something with the switch itself, and didn't really know how to troubleshoot that. Or two, that I had some heat or power related issue that I just wasn't seeing the other symptoms that would point to it. So this was another instance where I decided, you know what, I paid for support with Ubiquiti. I might as well actually use it. And so I sent them a message and walked through a couple of things with their support. Got some insight into things unrelated to my issue that were nice to learn about that I just hadn't realized had been added to their stuff. And we could do a whole separate discussion on that. But what it came down to is talked to them about, the behavior I was seeing, told them, look, my first instinct is still like, there's just got to be a cabling issue or maybe a power issue. What would you look at or what are some of the things that you would point to and kind of go from there? Ended up not actually paying a whole lot of attention to their recommendations because I took a step back. Well, and I don't want to discount it. Like, it's not that their recommendations were bad. It's just I took a step back from it and thought, what would I really, like, what's my easiest set of troubleshooting things to start with?
Well, I would come in because I'd step in to say that because this has happened to me before. Somebody's asked me for a recommendation, and then they went and did the complete opposite thing. And I used to get like annoyed by that. I was like, "What the hell did you even ask me for my recommendation?" And whether they're right or wrong about what they by doing the opposite thing, sometimes it does make sense to ask somebody for advice and help recommendation. And then when you hear that, that helps solidify your thinking in that I want to do the opposite thing of what this person said. Not that their advice was wrong, bad, or not good, or they didn't understand. It's just that hearing it from another source helps you realize that is exactly what I don't want to do.
Yeah, and so in this case, the main thing for me was one of the recommendations was to reset the switch and just to see if there might be a configuration related issue. And I didn't really want to do that as my first step because then I have to reconfigure everything. And I had just gone through and reconfigured everything. And so my thought was, let's just test the easiest to access physical possible problems first. So I swapped I did swap the little patch cable going from my panel to the switch, even though I really don't think that had any bearing. But that was easy to do, so I swapped it. And then I went up to the access point and just pulled it down, felt that it was warmer to the touch than I would like, and wondered if maybe the issue was that I had a crimp or something that was causing physically that connectivity on the Ethernet cable to the access point to generate more heat than it should, which would explain the 7 to 8 hour beginning of degradation. And part of why I also considered that is because it's the only place where the Ethernet cable had more of a kink to it than I would like personally. If you've, as someone who has been around it, if you ever look at a cable and you think, that's bent more than I really would like, congratulations, you're on your path to becoming a network administrator. But two, that there is a reason that becomes a thought process, because that can cause problems with connectivity for one of the wires or two of the wires, just depending on what is going on there. And so as I pulled it off and as I looked at it, it's like, I could fix this real quick too, just so that I know that it's done, and then put it back up, because I already have the ladder out. It's already here, right? And so I cut the end off. I pulled some slack through, put a new connector on the end, and then when I routed everything back up to put it back on the wall, I just made sure that it didn't have a hard kink to it. And I'm pretty sure that was the issue. But those are the two things that I changed. After I changed those, we're going on over 24 hours with no degradation. Seems to be rock solid. I'm going to guess it was that kink at the access point itself that was causing problems with heat buildup that was then causing degradation, just because it makes sense. And I have the exact same AP, model AP, in two other places. So I have 3 of those total. The other 2 experienced no issues. Configurations are identical. It's not like I'm... the only difference is the length of the cable and the physical location. And the one that I was having problems with would be the longest cable run, but not by much. None of them are really overly long, all less than 50 meters for sure, and so well below thresholds for PoE and distance and everything else. And so yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what was causing my issue, and it would explain why it manifested itself with reconfiguring everything and having a clean slate from a config perspective, because I wasn't paying attention to the connectivity and the configuration prior to redoing everything. So as long as it looked good, as soon as I plugged it in, I was not checking, 10, 12, 14 hours later. Like, unless I got an alert on something, I was not looking at the connectivity. Whereas I've been looking at it since I started reconfiguring things, because I'm making sure that things are identified and continuing to be identified the way I expect and want them to be, with things like the whole MAC randomization for Apple devices on Wi-Fi and how they get identified and all that stuff. So like I'm paying a lot more attention in my baking in period, if you will, of my new configuration to make sure I'm not getting, oh, there's a new device, but it's actually the same as this device and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So just more eyes on what's going on, which is how I caught that the uplink speed was changing, which I'm sure also explains some of the odd connectivity issues I was having before I restarted or redid all of the network configuration. So long story to get to the point of physical crimp in the cable seems to be causing the problem and is now resolved.
That is, I find it interesting when these just a crimp in the cable causes, upstream effects that are just crazy.
Well, I mean, I get it. So
yeah, but you're not expecting it.
Well, I mean, I am, but that's because I've been around it enough. It's like anytime I have odd issues with network equipment, my first thought is physical cabling. And really, 90% of the time, that's what it is. It's part of why you kind of get to a point where you think that way is because network cables aren't necessarily treated well in most environments. So you get people who will just yank on them or pull them through spaces or whatever else.
No. That's not okay.
And those conductors, if you have... All right, so let's back up ever so slightly. You have 8 conductors in a wire. 4 pairs twisted.
4 twisted pairs,
Yep. Yeah. You can have issues with a couple of the pairs and not have a problem depending on what all you're taking advantage of. But when you're talking about PoE to access points and higher bandwidth devices, having a problem with any pair can manifest itself in odd ways. And so you get to a point with especially modern devices that you start to question cabling first and then roll out other things second. In this particular case, I questioned other things first because I thought I had ruled out cabling by just moving it to another port and things seeming to be okay. It wasn't. It was further investigation and seeing degradation after a period of time that helped steer me back to a cabling issue. But if you have problems with one of the pairs, you could have problems with a specific pair that yields the device unusable, but you could have problems with one of the pairs that just means that it doesn't have peak performance either. And so it's difficult a lot of times to rule out cabling unless you actually take the time to rule out cabling. And so you kind of get to a point where it doesn't surprise you for cabling to be the answer when you have behaviors that you can't explain, I guess is the kind of the easy rule of thumb to live by from that perspective.
I think surprise was I used the wrong word. I think I'm not surprised at all by this. I'm just always, I think I'm just fascinated by how something relatively small can cause such broad, interesting issues. I think my first exposure to something like this was, it wasn't even happening to me, but when I first started working in a lab, there was, the folks in the lab were pretty happy because some of the experiments, they went through a 6-month drought of experiments not working. And what ended up being I'm pretty confident I've told you this story, but I'm going to say it again. But what ended up being the problem was across the street from the building they were working in, and that also had the animal facility. They were building another building was being built, and the construction company was pounding in metal rods to stiffen the earth that the building was going to be built upon. Because this is like I think it's a 13-story building, 14-story building. So they had to pound these rods into the ground to stiffen the ground to support the building, and that pounding, the vibration. So even though the animals in the animal facility couldn't hear it. Like I couldn't hear it. Like I was in there and they were still pounding and I couldn't hear it. But they I guess this is a best guess because the problems with their experiments coincided with the beginning of this and ended after that pounding of rods went in. But so they suspect that the vibrations from that was creating some stress in the animals, and they couldn't get the animals to they couldn't get the response out of the animals that they needed for their experiments.
Yeah,
so it's kind of it's nuts, right? I mean, it's like when you hear it, it's like, okay, that all makes sense. That's a plausible explanation, but at the same time, it's just like, wow, I don't know, like. Nobody. So the thing is, nobody would have guessed that until after it stopped. The only reason that they guessed that is because the loss of this phenomena and regain, being able to the phenomena coming back and then being able to do the experiments, 100% lines up with the pounding beginning and ending.
Yeah, I mean it's a perfect example of the same type of thing, because one of the other things that is often difficult to isolate is interference when you're with regard to like networking equipment, just because that's what spurred the initial conversation. But like you can have some really strange behaviors from or on networks based on interference within the environment as well. And it's something that a lot of people, I'm not going to say overlook or forget, but it can be very difficult to isolate or determine if you don't have equipment designed specifically to do so. And the types of things that can interfere range wildly, especially if you think about the early days of wireless networking. Microwave signals would wreak havoc on early wireless networks. And still can if things are configured in a specific way with modern wireless networks. Like it's not something that is moot by any means, even with advances in technology. It's just that with advances in technology, things can be configured in a way where it is unlikely for that to be a problem out of the box. And that's where we get to more so than removing the interference altogether. But if you live in an area where, live or work in an area where you have lots of wireless networks, those overlap. There's a very finite bandwidth allocation to use with different ranges of transmission for wireless networks as well. So if you're in a high rise, just as an example, and everybody's using 2.4 gigahertz for Wi-Fi, you're going to have overlap and you're probably going to have interference. And so those types of things are still also other manifestations of the same phenomenon with like a crimp in a wire for physical networks. It's just you have to be mindful of all the different ways in which network signals can be interrupted or interference in some fashion can affect network devices.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I was just thinking like all the Wi-Fi networking nerds are going to start talking about like 5 gigahertz and different channels and so on and so forth. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, but the nice thing is at this point so far, my network has been reconfigured from the ground up, modernized as far as definitions go, and seems to be working as I designed it, with the one notable exception of the fact that I didn't take into account the bastardization of modern network security protocols and Chromebooks/printers. That's the only thing that's sort of wrenching my plans. And so aside from that, everything is reconfigured the way I had intended. I just had to make an acquiescence. It's not actually what I was thinking about, but I like the word, for both the Chromebook and the printer, because neither one would function on anything other than 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi with relatively lax security compared to what I wanted to deploy. But that's it. Everything else is modernized, and all of everything has been deployed in a way that I can implement the new zone-based and policy-related firewall stuff if I want to.
So this sounds like a step up from like the Wi-Fi router combination that the ISP provides.
Yeah, just a little.
Are you using any ISP equipment?
Technically, yes, because it acts as the media bridge. But it is. So
is it a modem?
Yeah. Anybody that has AT&T fiber knows that you have to use their equipment. So I'll quick shout out to the junk that they install. I say that it's actually been okay, but I have it. The reason I call it junk is because you can't technically completely disable it as a router of sorts. So in an ideal world, I would take their modem, change it to bridge mode so that all it does is act as a intermediary cabling change from fiber to my router. Technically, I just have to turn off a bunch of stuff and then let it act as what did they call it? They have some other name for it. It's not truly bridge. I'd have to log in and look. But what it comes down to is there's some functionality retained on the modem, even though it's in a pseudo bridge mode, but that's how I have it deployed. So I turned off the wireless radios. I turned off everything else that I could turn off and have it mostly disabled, other than the couple of things that it just kind of always does.
Okay. I have no idea what our modem is doing. I think I've always asked, I want a dumb modem. I know it's doing something more. I know it doesn't have Wi-Fi, so. Because, a lot of times they'll charge, there was a short period of time where they were, all right, here's this modem that has a wireless router in it and, or has wireless router functionality. And it was like, cool, here you go. And then they started charging like $6 a month.
Yeah, the Spectrum I know will still try to do so occasionally. I think it depends on which plan you buy. Like it's been at least 2.5 years since I looked, so this could be outdated. But when we moved to this house, we had Spectrum before in the old house. They would charge for Wi-Fi even then, and it was a bit of a fight to get them to just bring me the bare minimum dumb modem that I could get in that particular install. So it would not surprise me if they still do. I know it that if I remember correctly, if you had the basic connectivity package, they would charge you for the Wi-Fi functionality. But if you stepped up to middle tier, or maybe even it may have been that you had to go to the higher tier, just the connectivity speed to the premises, then they would waive the Wi-Fi fee. So it's all a BS tier structure, just like cable used to be. But
I know.
I have been very happy overall with AT&T fiber to the home, for sure. I have my complaints, but most of those are just because I have what I have deployed. I have complaints. If I didn't have that deployed, I would not have complaints. So I take that as an acceptable. I can complain just because I am who I am, but I'm not actually going to make a big deal out of it because realistically, what they're providing is pretty solid.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a point where if I'm not going to pay for commercial equipment, then I can't complain about not having commercial equipment.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.
I saw where they painted some on my walk. I saw where they painted some things, and I saw where they posted some. They're starting to put some things. I was like, are they gonna put fiber? And it's too far away from where my house is, so it's like, because my house is like the neighborhood I live in is on the edge of UAB's campus, so walking from, I'm less than these are big blocks, but like I walk 3 blocks and 2.5 to 3 blocks, and I'm on UAB's campus. So I don't know if they're doing work on the campus network or if there will access to fiber. But for as close as I live to a great internet connection, I get shitty internet.
Yeah, it's I'm often very surprised that I have access to what I have here because of the age of the infrastructure for everything else. There is a drawback. So a lot of AT&T's cabling in the neighborhood is above ground instead of underground because of the age of the neighborhood and trying to go back and retrofit stuff. So there is a risk that I will have problems depending on storms and, everything else. But so far, it's been pretty solid.
I know that the kids the neighborhood my kids live in, fiber. Well, I know that they put fiber in. I don't know if they have fiber in their house, but I know that that fiber was put into that part of the suburbs. I was jealous because they had these spools of fiber sitting out and while they were doing the project, and they were digging up the ground, and it's like everyone either has there's some yards that had just whatever grass was growing there, and now they have a bit of sod on the edge of next to the sidewalk. But fiber, I could have had that if I'd moved into a neighborhood. Like, I think about that from time to time.
Yeah, they're for the other faults that we have in the area as far as utilities go, I really so far don't have any complaints. Like we've talked about it. I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, but like the only other real complaint I have here is the power, because it's all above ground. And so a number of times, good strong winds, and you'll have issues with outages. And so we took the step of installing a generator and decided it was a worthwhile investment. And it's been funny as we go for a walk. Like, I've spotted 3 or 4 houses, I think just in the past few months, that have added generators. Like, it's a common thing in this area. It's not abnormal at all. I'll put it that way, because we don't expect power company to pour the money into actually burying cable in an old neighborhood anytime soon. At least not in our lifetime. Yeah. But anyway, so it's like, yes, it's frustrating that we felt like that was a step we needed to take, but at the same time, I'm so relaxed with regard to, I never have to worry about power as long as there's either an electrical grid or natural gas. Like, it just, there's a certain amount of, oh yeah, I guess we're running on generator for a few hours. It definitely changes your outlook with regard to service access or utility access, I guess. I don't know. There's a lot there, but there's a different mindset shift that has occurred. And it's similar to, if you, kind of an odd analogy, but if you grew up out in the middle of nowhere, like I did, where you didn't have utilities other than electricity that were reliable. So like well water, gas was not a thing. You had to buy propane tanks or have, the large ones that you would have trucks come out and fill up if you wanted to use gas related services. Like, there was an expectation of utility access being problematic. And so coming from that,
or just different, like not in Yeah.
And so coming from
something that requires you to
background-
do some, yeah.
Right. And so coming from that background, like for me, it was always great to think about an electric stove, but I needed gas to the premises as a backup, right? So, worst case scenario, electricity could be out, but I could still warm something up. And that was kind of the mindset. And so it's nice to have that with regard to electricity with the generator, because now, yeah, ideally, I don't have a problem with the electrical grid and everything's working great. But if I do have a problem, I've got something else that takes over for whatever the time frame is. It's that mindset, that shift just drains away a certain amount of anxiety that I just didn't realize was there. I don't even know how it got on this as being a tangent. I just realized what we're talking about. Yeah.
It started with fiber infrastructure and went to other infrastructure.
And so now, I guess to bring it full circle, the biggest thing that I have to consider is, do I finally have a backup for network access as well so that I run that again? Or do I think things are good enough? Because I now have, backup for warming something up. I have a backup for electricity. Network access is really the only thing that's potential failure, but at the same time, I have a cell phone that I could tether off of. So, maybe I do have a backup. I just don't have a backup that I could deploy in a whole home situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's yeah.
At this point, the fiber has been reliable enough. I don't want to pay for another provider. I'll just deal.
Yeah, it got me thinking about solar panels, because I thought about like, what would that look like? Because I get good sun, and I mean, as it turns out, it is the way the laws in Alabama are written. The Southern Company, Alabama Power, they have ways of like there's some amount of like cost that I can't remember what it is, but it ends up being disadvantageous to try solar. Have you heard this?
I haven't, but it wouldn't surprise me, because I know. So we could have a separate discussion here for two different reasons. So one, I've played with solar with regard to the Jackery generator that I've got in the shed, and so it works well. If I were setting it up in a way to actually take advantage of proper distribution of sunlight for the purposes of really being a generator for the shed and not just the limited use I need, it would work great. And that can be a separate discussion. But that was kind of the first thought, was at a high level, based on my experiences with it, I would love to do solar. I just don't know that it's cost effective yet from a install perspective versus what I would get generated from that install. Not that it would be bad, just that I don't think I would really see any savings in my lifetime. Like it would at least be a net wash by the time we got to whatever down the road. But the other thing that where I was kind of going that prompted the thought here about how we could have a whole separate discussion. I know there are currently, I think it's still currently proposed. There's been a lot of discussion about some current legislation that would eliminate certain amount of oversight for the Public Service Commission, which oversees Southern Company's rates and some other stuff. And like there are a lot of current legal things. And because of some other things other than just that, but like comments having seen from people complaining about the utilities and the fact that Southern Company basically has relatively unchecked power in what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. Right? That would be the easiest way to summarize it. I've actually purchased a system to install in the breaker panel to monitor electric usage and compare it to what is being reported, because of a combination of those things and observed questionable reporting, I guess is the way I would put it, where over the course of the winter, I have not seen my usage for electricity drop. And normally I do. I have never, in the entire decade that I've been in this cursed state, not seen a drop in the winter months for electric usage. And this particular winter just passed, or we're kind of on the edge of winter, I didn't see any drop. My usage and billing has been consistent from the summer months through the winter months. And I find that questionable. And I don't have a way to argue that. I'm reliant on what they are reporting because I have no other way of measuring it. So I ordered a system. I have not installed it yet, but I am planning to be able to specifically monitor usage independently from what they're reporting to compare. Because part of it could be that I'm just using more electricity than I used to because of some other things that we've done, like the hot tub being an obvious point. But I don't think it's because we installed it prior to winter, and so through the summer months it was also running. I don't see that that's the answer, because I still should have seen a drop in general like HVAC usage compared to auxiliary heat, which is actually just the blower and natural gas from a heating perspective. So yes, all that to say, I have questions, and I don't have a good way to measure it and know for sure that I have answers until I get that system in place, which is driven from concerns about Southern Company's general power that I have read about as a result of those questions. So, I guess the too long didn't read version is that I am sort of aware, but I'm aware for different reasons.
Yeah, no, I did a quick look and I saw they have Alabama Power has a standby fee. So not only will they not only can you not give them power, put power into the grid and get an offset that in your favor, they charge a standby fee. And it's roughly $5 per kilowatt per month. That's crazy. Like they're they're trying to stifle the adoption of solar power.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. I see there being no surprise with that being their stance, and I also see it being no surprise that there's no regulation or control from a local government perspective because of how stupid this state is.
Yep.
And that is literally the nicest way I can put it.
You're not wrong. It's ridiculous. So